Hi everybody, welcome to All Games New and Old. I'm David Rodriguez, and today we're going to do something a little different. I'm going to be doing an early review of a game that's coming to Kickstarter in October 2021, so probably right around the corner as you're watching this. The game is Terraternity The Card Challenge, and it's one of two Terraternity games coming out on Kickstarter from Inconveniencer Games. This one is designed by Outtro Newman. Now, this game has a very strong ecological or green theme to it. In order to discuss that with you and tell you a little bit more about what it's about, I have what I'm told is an ecological expert, so let me send it over to him. It is I, the Inconveniencer, here to tell you about Terraternity The Card Challenge. In this game, you try to build renewable energy power plants to make countries carbon neutral, and you must do it better than your opponents. I must say I love this theme. Protecting this planet from ecological disasters, very important to me. Inconveniencer, what are you doing here? This isn't a superhero game, and you're a supervillain. Why do you even care about saving the environment? Hard disagree, my dude. There is nothing more superheroic than saving the world from ecological disaster. Besides, I'm the Inconveniencer. It's hard to inconvenience anyone in a wasteland. Wow, that's really great to hear. I misjudged you. I care about the planet so much, I even recycled all your miniatures. You what? The Inconveniencer strikes again! Damn it. Here, check out the promotional video and the gameplay overview. I'll be back with final thoughts.
Terraternity, now on Kickstarter.
Alright, so here I have Terraternity, the card challenge, all set up for play. I'm only showing you one player's turn of it. You cannot actually play a one-player game. It's a 2 to 6 player game, but just to make it easy and to show you what the phases of the turn are, I have it set up, and basically I have it set up so that I've already gotten a little bit into the game, because on the very first turn, you only do the 5th phase of your turn, you don't do all the rest, and I want to kind of walk you through one by one. So just so you know, when we get to the 5th, I'll remind you that that's how your game actually starts. I'll show you here too. Now this is our globe. So that is a big, cool 3D cardboard piece. And the stand I have on top, this is where the dexterity element of this game is going to come into play when you're balancing cubes on this. I have the one in there, I believe it's for 2 to 4. You could also do just this one if you're playing 2 players and you're extremely steady-handed. That's a very small platform. We have this one that's good for 3 to 6 players. And then you also have this plus-shaped one, which you could do for 2 to 4 as well. That one's a little more colorful as well. But you can kind of choose which one you want to go with. So I've got all my cubes over here. Oh, there's something I forgot to do over here. So I'm going to show you sort of how this works. I have my energy cards, country cards, and action cards. I have my black cubes, yellow or orange cubes, and white cubes. So on the first phase of your turn, what you're going to do, I'm going to put my hand down here, is you're going to check your power plants. Those are the cards with these green borders here. And what it means by checking them is some of them take a certain amount of turns or years to build. So in that case, like this one had 2. So if I just put this down on my first turn of the game, I would have put 2 white cubes on here, and those represent time passing basically. This one also comes with a yellow cube that I started here, and the country I put down also gave me a yellow cube, which I have access to immediately. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of these cubes off of here to mark the passage of time. Then we're going to move on to the second one, which is going to be to check countries for carbon neutrality. So if you have a finished power plant attached to a country card, here, let me lift these up so you can maybe see a little better. What you're going to do is you're going to compare, again, the energy or the power plant has to be finished, the green cube level of this and this one, and then see if it equals or is greater than the carbon output of the country. So in this case, Kazakhstan, the carbon output is 8. So if this one was done, I only have 7 green cubes. There's not actually cubes, but essentially 7 green cubes that are kind of there to neutralize the carbon. So I wouldn't have it neutraled yet. If I had, let's just pretend this added up well, I would go ahead and put this to the side in an area that would be my scoring area. I put both the cards over there. All right, but since it is not that way, we would move on to the third part of the turn. So we're going to take cubes that match or black cubes that match the carbon output of the country, as well as the building carbon output of the power station since it is not built yet. So the total here, 8 plus 6 would be 14. So I'm probably not going to try to balance all these here in front of you, but just to get an idea of how it works. That's probably close. It's close. All right. All right, so now if I did have another power plant out here on the board that was completed, I could then take its green value and subtract that many black cubes from what I have to put up. So that can be really helpful, but I don't have that right now. Then you're going to add the carbon cubes to the Terra globe. Now, I'll show you an optional thing you do, and that is these action cards. Now, when you're about to do this phase, you're going to draw an action card, and it's going to have, it could be a challenge or, well, let me find the other type of card here so I can show you. I'm getting all the challenges. Or an awareness card. So the awareness card, I'll show you that first. So this says recycle and reduce waste, and then it has something you're supposed to read out loud. So in this case, it says resources are valuable. Recycling will benefit your community and the environment. Share the content, take the extra yellow cube, and add the card to your score area. So I would go ahead and take the yellow cube. Now you can add this to your score area, in which case it would get you 6 points at the end of the game. You could also use it right now and just discard it to take 6 green cubes away from what you have to put up. Or you could put this in your hand and use it at a future time when you have to add black cubes to the globe. That does take up space in your hand though, so you have to decide that's what you want to do. Let's go ahead and I'm going to say that I'm going to go ahead and discard this and put it at the bottom of the action deck to get rid of 6 cubes. But let me show you the challenge card as well. You wouldn't actually use both of these at once. You'd only pick one, but just so I can show you what these are. These are physical challenges, and they make putting the green cubes, or excuse me, the black cubes, tougher. Now, this is an optional thing. You don't have to use these. And if you have people who have like physical issues with dexterity using their hands in odd ways, you might not want to use these. So this one, place cubes between the 3rd and 4th fingers of these two. And you have to basically place all your cubes that way. So you can imagine how tough this gets, because the game's already pretty hard. So I'd go ahead and try to stack them. Now, when you're doing this, you cannot push cubes that are already placed with your hand. You can't, okay, so I just dropped one, but you can place them with other cubes. When you're doing this, if you do drop a cube, it creates an ecological disaster. So when that happens, you'll remove any cubes that are on there, off of there, and you have to take one of your countries, and you're basically going to turn it sideways and put that in your scoring area too. But the sideways ones will give you negative points. So all the carbon output points on those cards will count against your score at the end of the game. So you really don't want that to happen. Let's say I went ahead and I actually did get them all balanced just for the sake of showing you the rules here. I don't remember what I said, but when you do that, it does end your turn then at that point. So that would go on to the next person's turn, and they have a nice clean globe to balance things on. All right, let's say that's all the cubes that I had to do, just for sake of showing you. All right, so then the next part of your turn is to play cards. So this is where my hand of cards comes into play here. I would go ahead and look, and I would play a country first. So one thing to keep in mind is that you want to see how many black cubes it has on the top, because when you place that out, you're going to have to put those on the globe again. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll say I'll put out South Korea, which will give me 3 green cubes towards carbon neutrality, but I have to put 7 up right away. So I had to go ahead and get my 7, and I would start placing them. Yeah, okay, I already created a disaster because I'm not trying very hard. Again, let's just say I put them on there, just so I can show you the rest of the turn. Then if I want to, I could put an energy plant down. All mine right now are done in 2 years, so I want to find one. They all have the same that I have in my hand. They all have the same CO2 output, so none of them are going to be easier, but these have more green on them. So I'll go ahead and I'll put this one here, which is nice because it gives me a yellow cube. And then I'd have to put the black cubes again on the globe. I won't do them all to match those numbers. So it's really hard, really tricky. You have to be so very steady. At least with this at this part of the turn, you don't have to use an action card. You can place them just normally, whatever that is for you. Now, one thing I forgot to mention is after that fourth phase where you do the action cards, you can then pass your turn. If you don't want to do the stage, you don't have to. So just so you know, that's a possibility, and it's kind of important. You could also now, at this point, you could spend your yellow cubes to complete one of your power plants, but it basically will cost 1 for every completed or a carbon neutral country that you have in your scoring area. So right now I don't have any, so it would still just cost 1. They don't ever cost 0. But if I wanted to, I could take these and I could basically end one of these. Now, if it has a yellow cube on it, you have to pay 1 extra. So in this case, because both of them do, if I wanted to finish one, I would actually have to pay 2 yellow cubes, which I have. So I could go ahead and do that and then complete this power plant and get that yellow cube. So that's nice. Now, one thing that's kind of interesting is I could also complete someone else's, like one of my opponent's power plants if I wanted to. If I had the yellow cubes to do it, I could do that, and then I would take their country, and then I would put it in my scoring area. So it's sort of like a hostile takeover of your opponents, which is pretty brutal, but it's a good catch-up mechanism because it's easier for someone who's behind to do that, and it's harder for someone who's ahead, so they can't steal from someone weaker easily anyway. So that is something that you could do. Then, at the end, you're going to draw cards back up so you have 4, and you can get energy or country cards. And by the way, also, I could have kept playing more country cards if I wanted to. If I felt confident in my ability to stack these up, I could play now, after your first turn, as many of these as you want. But on that very first turn, you just play 1 country card and 1 energy card, and that's it. So, anyway, once you've done all that, you could discard any cards that you don't want, but if you do so, you have to immediately place the cubes for any cards you discard. But if you have countries or power plants that you just don't like, you could do that. Either way, I'm going to go ahead and draw back up to 6, and I could pick 2 energy or 2 country if I wanted to in this case as well. It doesn't matter. So then it's going to go to your opponent's turn. They're going to go through all those same steps. If they don't have the things necessary to do certain steps, like sometimes you don't have any stuff out, so you wouldn't do steps 3 and 4. You just go right to 5 and play a country card. They would do their turn, and it would just go back and forth until eventually someone has 5 carbon neutral countries in their scoring area. Then you'd play out the rest of that year or turn, and at the end you'd count up your score again. So any ones you made carbon neutral, you'd count up the green points on your cards. If you have any that are turned sideways because you created a disaster trying to save things, you would then subtract the total value of the black points, and that would be your score. And then, of course, whoever has the highest score wins. So that's how you play Terraternity The Card Challenge. It's actually a pretty easy rule set to get down, and pretty fun and high intensity game when you're trying to put those black cubes up there. So with that being said, let me get to our final thoughts on this game. All right, I hope that gameplay overview is helpful to you to see how this is played. Now, this game we're going to do a little different than some of our other reviews because it is just a prototype version. We can't go too deep into the art and components and whatnot. We'll talk a little bit about that. And we're not going to give it a traditional 1 to 10 or 0 to 10 score. We're just going to kind of tell you what our general thoughts are about it and, the kind of things that we'd like to see or anything that we think is great. Just kind of a general overview of our thoughts on the game. As far as the art and components go so far, though, I think the direction they're going in is good. I mean, not a lot of crazy art. Like the pictures of the countries and then the pictures of the different sorts of energy plants and whatnot. But I think that art is pretty decent.
Yeah, and I mean, at least my understanding is that this is coming off as a very educational game, and most educational games, it's not. The artwork is not the focus of the game. Mm-hmm. And so for being an educational game about pollution, I think they did a really good job of incorporating the artwork and tying it into the theme.
Yeah, and this is going to sound strange, and I can't really explain why I like this specifically, but the 3D globe thing, for some reason I like that the planet is not in traditional colors, like the ocean's sort of purplish. I don't know why. I don't know why I think that's cool, but I just sort of do. I think it looks more interesting than if it was just the regular colors. That's just me. I don't know if they're going to keep it that way or not, but, right now. I'm digging that. And, the cubes seem to be good quality and whatnot, so I don't really have any complaints over where they're going with this so far. In terms of the theme, I really thought that it captured the theme very well. I wasn't sure about it when I was first reading it, how it really would feel like you're combating, a climate crisis, but I think it's interesting because with the mechanic of stacking the black COQ tubes on top of the globe, it kind of is an interesting symbolism for how your efforts can kind of go wrong. Like, you're trying to make things right, but oh gosh, you didn't get maybe you forgot this factor of what would protect the environment. I mean, I don't know. What did you think about how the theme captured this?
Yeah, I think it gets captured pretty well. Like, it scales. I think it scales well for, different players since they have the different discs that you can put on top of the globe, which I don't know if they meant for it to be, but because the discs are white, it kind of looks like it's supposed to be the polar cap.
Yeah.
And so the fact that can be scaled, and you can even change the difficulty of the game based off of that. But it's I think they did a good job of incorporating the theme. And like I said, it's an educational game. And so if you're actually really paying attention to what the cards say, there's a lot of education in this game too.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting. I didn't look at every single card and check this, but I'm pretty sure all the different countries, when they decided how many green cubes versus the green output versus the CO2 output it had, was based on the actual percentages of how those countries are doing that, which is kind of interesting. It does lead to some things where it's not designed to be this perfectly balanced, even thing. They do have a couple things to sort of mitigate that with the yellow cubes you can get, but you could get a hand of cards that is either very difficult to get the points or very easy to, but it is kind of cool that they did that. So you have kind of a concept in general, a snapshot of how the different countries are doing. And I think that's kind of neat.
Yeah, and I also appreciate it's not working yet, but I'm curious to see when it is working. Not all the cards, but a lot of the cards have a CR code that you can scan and get more information.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a really clever idea too. So I'm curious what other information they're going to add to the website when that starts working.
Yeah, me too. And one thing, this maybe we should have gone more with components and theme, but what the heck, here it is. So one thing that's really cool about this is they're not just talking the talk, they're walking the walk with this thing. They're trying to, put it out using recycled cardboard and whatnot, and being very sustainable in every way they can. And they've pledged to plant a tree for every copy they sold. So that's really cool. They're not just saying, hey, yeah, you guys should, be good to the earth. Here's 200 plastic miniatures, something like that, which, look, I'm not against miniatures, so I can't pretend I am. But I mean, I'm just saying it's neat that they are really going out of their way to try to make sure that the ideas that the game is putting forward, that they're also trying to live up to those ideas as well. So as far as the gameplay goes, I really had fun with it. I think it's those black cubes, putting them on the globe, that is much more tense than I expected it to be.
There's a lot of tension throughout the game when you're playing, for sure. Especially if you end up having to do the challenge cards.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Some of the challenge I think if I remember correctly, there's a rule where you don't have to play with the challenge cards. It does add to the game, but it's already a dexterity game, which can be hard for some people. But then the challenge cards can make that even harder.
Yeah.
I actually have a problem with my arms not wanting to work correctly all the time, and so one of the challenges, I'm I don't think I can actually physically do this.
Yeah.
So I still tried it, and I actually was able to do it, but it was very hard for me to physically be able to do it. So
yeah, and some of those, depending on what the state is of the globe, it's just like, it's going to be a fail. Like, you just, if you have a really uneven thing to put it on, because we have already stacked things in all kinds of weird ways, and then it says you have to put 4 on at once, like, it's over. Like, you're going to have a climate disaster for sure. But that being said, it's a game where I feel like, because it is dexterity, and because, as I mentioned, the cards aren't necessarily fully balanced to each other. They're based more on actual real stats. It's not a game that I feel like you're supposed to be really just super serious and trying to, like, worry perfectly about your strategy and whatnot. So, if you get one of those cards that kind of messes you up, it's just kind of like, oh boy, here we go. Let's just try and hope for a miracle and, not worry about it too much, I would say. I mentioned it in my run through of the gameplay. The rules that we had the most confusion over, I felt, were just the rules of the yellow cues. Ours are kind of orange, but whatever, here or there. But they're a little trickier, and the taking over somebody's energy plant is, man, that feels mean to do. It really does. I think but you, like you pointed out, were you saying that you thought it'd be a good catch up mechanism?
It could be a good catch up mechanism, like if you're playing with more than 2 people, it can be a good catch up mechanism, because as you start winning it, like if you're in the lead of the game, it's going to be harder for you to get enough yellow cubes to take over somebody else's plant. So if you're in the lead and somebody's in last place, it might be able to give them a chance to kind of catch up in the game a little bit. So maybe that was the point of it. But
yeah, it kind of seems like it, and it seems like a lot of the countries that you can put out, if they're very difficult in one aspect, you also maybe get a yellow cube for putting them out too. So it helps kind of balance. Like that's where they try, I think, to balance some of those countries that are just a little tougher to work with. Like some will give you like 2 green output, but like 8 black COQ tubes, and that's a rough one to want to put down, but they try to give you something usually for that.
The one other, like, kind of, I don't know, component part that was a little bit of could have a little bit of an improvement on is the rulebook itself. There seems to be a little bit of a language barrier or translation issue with some of the rules, so some of the rules weren't very clear on what they meant, or the way it read, it didn't match with the way it's supposed to be played. So just hopefully they can do a little bit of tweaking there.
Yeah, and I think that's just a factor of it being a prototype. Yeah. Like there's even something with like the action cards where like the rule on them, the way it's stated, doesn't match what the rule in the rulebook says exactly. But that's, I'm not too worried about that yet. I think that's something that can be worked out. The other thing we ran across that could be a little bit of a problem is if you have a situation where the players don't have countries in front of them and there's a lot of cubes stacked on the globe already, anyone who puts down a country card is going to have a difficult time because they have to put cubes on there. So you could pass, but then your opponent could pass, and then you could pass, and your opponent could pass. And you could basically do that forever until someone either finally says, okay, forget it, I'm just going to do this so we can move on, or you are done with it all. And that's, again, something I'm not too worried about at this stage. I think, something that maybe if you had like, a few tokens every game that you could use, and you can only pass that many times, that might help with that. Or if you can do it more than, once in a row or something.
Yeah, or like, you can only do it if you already have a country out.
Yeah. Yeah, something along those lines, just to make sure that you don't get caught in the situation where nobody has to pick the thing that's going to mess them up to just keep the game going. Because that's kind of something where it's like, like she would pass, and then it's like, well, it'd make more sense for me to pass as well, because I don't want to put cubes on that thing. But when will that ever stop? And so I was like, well, forget it. I'm just going to do it and hope for the best. But, knowing the chances of me actually getting the cubes on there are highly unlikely. So hopefully that's something that can be kind of tweaked a little bit. But that was actually really my main stumbling block with the game. I'm just like, oh, this could end up in the situation you can't get out of. So, I don't know. Did you have any other thoughts as far as like issues that you're hoping to see different or anything along those lines?
I think that was the main one. The yellow cubes are thinking about it as a way for the person that's far behind to catch up. Help me with the yellow cube situation. But if that's not the intent, then I think the yellow cubes are really hard to be able to get enough to actually be able to use them. Because you have to have enough to match whatever country you have, and then most of the time when you're using it, the card you're using it on also has a yellow cube on it, so you have to have an additional one. So be able to collect enough yellow cubes to actually be able to use them seemed difficult to do in the game.
Yeah, it's definitely not something that unless you're just very lucky, I guess, going to be using a ton. It's going to be real occasional if you can pull it off, I think. But it always seemed like it's, it's kind of designed this way where early in the game, if you can somehow secure some yellow cubes, like you can kind of use them. But, it's going to be hard to have somebody that has like 4 countries already carbon neutral and have them actually be able to use it, which, is probably a good thing in a way. But yeah, other than that, I know one thing we talked about was that this could be a good educational tool. The only sticking point there is it's a little bit of a longer game. I gotta keep this in perspective. For the type of game it is, for being sort of dexterity, pretty luck based, it's kind of long. It's not like Arkham Horror or something. It's not, extremely long. But because of that, it's kind of the sort of thing where we thought, well, if we were going to use it to teach our kids about this, we might start with the win condition of getting, maybe 3 countries carbon neutral or something first. And then if the kids really are liking it and having fun doing it too, then you can go ahead and go to the full 5 countries to be the win condition. But just to kind of, make it so kids aren't losing their attention span if you are trying to play this with kids. But I do think it's good for that. I think it's an interesting thing, especially with like some of the action cards that just have like facts on them. That's kind of neat. So you can, it'll suggest like, okay, well, you could do this to help cut down your carbon footprint and all kinds of interesting stuff on there. So
yeah, like I could see this being I could actually see this being a tool in a classroom if the gameplay can be toned down. If that just means just having it so that you have your goal is less carbon neutral to win. If it can somehow get toned down to, like maybe 20 minutes of gameplay, I could see it being kind of a fun educational tool in classrooms.
Definitely. I think we've covered pretty much everything. I'm enjoying the game so far. I'm curious to see what tweaks, if any, they'll make to the final product, and I'm also sort of curious if they'll change any of the components. I don't know that they need to very much. Sometimes I'm like, man, these platforms you put these cubes on are like really really tiny, and I don't know, it's just I don't have a steady enough hand for this or what. But like sometimes I'm like, oh man, I think maybe a little bit bigger would be nice, but. I don't know. You don't want to make it too easy either, so...
It's a little bit of dexterity and also depth perception, because
that's true.
The discs are a little harder to tell like how far back you can actually go.
Yeah, that's true. But then like the plus-shaped one, it's kind of like almost prescribed to you how you're going to put them on there, because it's... I guess you could try to do something different, but...
Yeah.
It's kind of the shape that it's going to be, but... But either way, I enjoyed using either type. It's just, boy, that thing gets difficult so quick. It's crazy. So, I don't know, the little, I think I mentioned this in the overview, but the one that's just a 2-player disc, okay, if you're like playing with a surgeon and you're a surgeon and your hand's that steady, you could probably do that, but man, I'm not gonna, that one's too little for me.
Use chopsticks.
Yeah, maybe. God, I don't know, but it's rough. But anyway, yeah, I'm excited about the game to see where it goes from here. I hope you guys will check it out. If you think it sounds awesome or not, let me know. I'm curious to see what other people's thoughts are on this game, because we had we were lucky enough to get a copy and have it in front of us to actually try out. I'm curious what people who are looking at it, more from the outside think. So definitely let me know. I'd love to hear it. And I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please hit like and subscribe and click the little bell icon so you'll know about the next time we put out a video. And I look forward to seeing you all around the table again at All Games New and Old.
Bye.
Oh, God, it hurts. Other than that, I hope all... I lost it. And I look forward to seeing you all... It's part of the review. So... Alright, I hope that gameplay overview was useful to you. So, I already screwed this up.